Okay, thank you very much. Professor Kondapalli, as I said in the beginning, in June 2012, China said Sino-Indian ties could be the most important partnership of the century, reminding of Obama's description of India-US ties as the most defining relationship of the 21st century. The President Xi recently told Sushma Swaraj during her visit that following his visit to India in September last year, relations between the two countries have entered a new stage of growth and expressed confidence on the future of relations. What is your objective take on this?
Thank you. I think the Chinese President's speech, the Chinese Premier's speech is in the context of improving the bilateral relations overall. But I think we should take it with a pinch of salt. There are so many issues which have not been resolved between India and China. There is, at a minimum, A and B in international system should have a defined border. The territorial dispute has not been resolved. In this case, India-China border, despite negotiations, talks have not been resolved. So there is a huge gaping hole in this relationship. Second is there is a huge factor of nationalism in China today. Arunachal Pradesh is treated as southern Tibet, and if Tibet is a core interest for China, southern Tibet as a part of Tibet is also a core interest for China, which means there is, as President Xi Jinping said in 2012, that core interests are more important than developmental interests, indicating that there is a possibility here of asserting China's position. Secondly, I would say that there is, despite the assertion that there will be improvement in relations between the two countries, we have seen that there's not much Chinese forthcoming attitude. For example, in terms of the Indian membership in the nuclear supplies group, there has not been any statement from China in this regard. Secondly, China is the only country out of the P5 which had not explicitly endorsed Indian candidature in the United Nations Security Council. So from this point of view, if you look at the next decade of relations between India and China, it is likely that there is not much that is happening at the highest level in terms of Indian interests. So I would say that there has been much speculation from the Indian side about the Chinese intentions, Chinese goodwill, etc. But we have not seen that happening on the ground. There is also a change in China's position on issues which India and China have been discussing for a long time recently. For example, in the WTO, for example, in the climate change proposals, China, despite being a basic member, Brazil, South Africa, India, China grouping at the Copenhagen, China today is discussing climate change related issues with the United States. In November last year, Obama and Xi Jinping had the climate change proposals discussed, and they have a separate bilateral understanding on the climate change related issues. So in other words, there is also a pressure building up on India, which became clear during President Obama's visit in January this year, on India also signing the climate change related issues with the United States. The other issue I think we need to also factor in is if the national security challenge number one for India is cross-border terrorism, what is China's position in that regard? We have not seen any explicit endorsement from China in this issue. Although we have hand-in-hand joint operations between the two armies so far, but China had not been able to come up with counter-terrorism related issues in a more concrete manner with India. So I think there is a certain reservation on the part of the counter-terrorism. Also, on piracy related, China had sent 19 contingents to the Indian Ocean region. This is putting some pressure on the Indian Navy as well. So I will stop here.
Okay, thank you. Professor Pravakar, China's Global Times, after Modi's visit to Japan, wrote, the increasing intimacy between Tokyo and New Delhi will bring at most psychological comfort to the two countries. What is involved in China-India relations denotes much more than display of blossoming of personal friendship between Modi and Abe. It is South Asia where India needs to make its presence felt. China is a neighbor it cannot move away from. Sino-Indian ties can in no way be counterbalanced by Japan-India friendship.
Thank you. What is stake for Japan at the moment is the very pacifist image it had carried through in the last 7 decades. Especially the security policy and the defense policy of Japan is set to see a great change now. Since last July, a decision to reinterpret the constitution. When we say constitution, it especially refers only to Article 9, which renounces war as an instrument of settling international disputes. And here, political leadership changes in every country. Modi and Abe are not given to stay for all the time. Japan's survival, if is threatened, Japan sees it is threatened, not just in energy products move all across Indo-Pacific region to Japan. If there is any disturbance anywhere now, after Japan is said to see that as a threat to itself. And most important change that is going to come very soon, this calendar year, is that they are going to deploy the SDF overseas to protect Japanese interest. This thought has come especially since 2 Japanese nationals were killed by ISIS just a month ago. And Japanese see, not just in the neighborhood, not just in the Asia-Pacific region, but even in away, any situation changing to be interpreted by the Japanese as if their economic survival will be threatened. Economic survival for Japan is also, in terms of security, a survival question. So making and unmaking of alliances are now on the cards for Japanese diplomacy. Unmaking, not so much. It is making more and more. US-Japan Security Mutual Treaty is not going to change. Maybe there will be some more freedom accorded to Japan to interpret the way they want, especially deployment of their SDF overseas. So it is Japan first Asian country to modernize, westernize, industrialize and spread the benefits to rest of Asia. Here Asia for Japan means East Asia, are extended up to Southeast Asia. India now is a part of it because we are experiencing the benefit of Japanese, especially technology and capital deployment for our industrial growth. As far we walk with Japan, the rope is not so tight, especially in economic affairs. When it comes to relationship in security and defense matter, maritime exercises, joint exercises, there is going to be some concern, and world is watching what Abe does, his action. Number 2, and more importantly, as Professor Kondapalli mentioned, there is a rise of nationalism, a sort in China. Equally, there is a rise of nationalism of a sort in Japan too. And Abe is a part and a leader of that. And this nationalist presence in the ruling Liberal Democratic Party and its partner too is going to set the tone for Japanese diplomacy in the few years to come. Long term, we aren't aware what's going to happen.